Ethan Carter grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a small house on the edge of the city. On the outside, he was just like any other 17-year-old, bright, athletic, and full of potential, but on the inside, Ethan carried a dream far bigger than most people could imagine. He wanted to become a neurosurgeon, not just any neurosurgeon, but one who pioneered life-saving procedures, one who made a difference. In his mind, he pictured himself standing in an operating room, saving lives, making the impossible possible. But Ethan had a problem. It wasn't money. It wasn't a lack of opportunity. It wasn't even a question of intelligence. His biggest battle was with himself. Every time he sat down to study, he got distracted. 10 minutes into reading, his phone would buzz. One notification turned into 5, then 10. Just 5 minutes, he told himself, as he scrolled through TikTok and YouTube. 5 minutes turned into hours. Homework was pushed aside. Plans were broken. Promises to himself were quietly forgotten. Ethan kept telling himself there was still time, that he was smart enough to make it work later. But later never came. His teachers told him he had potential. His parents believed in him. His friends thought he was destined for something great. But deep down, Ethan knew the truth. He was wasting it. The breaking point, one chilly afternoon in October. Ethan's high school posted the results of the National Science Merit Exam. Winning meant a full scholarship to Stanford's pre-med program. It was his shot, the opportunity he had been dreaming of. Ethan scrolled through the list of names. His hands trembled. His heart pounded in his chest. His name wasn't there. He read the list again and again. It was nowhere to be found. Tyler's name, though, was right at the top. Tyler, his best friend, the guy who had studied relentlessly for 6 months while Ethan scrolled his life away. Tyler stood at the front of the hallway, surrounded by congratulations, high fives, and hugs. His face beamed with pride. Ethan stood in the back, alone. He wasn't angry at Tyler. He wasn't even angry at his teachers or his parents. He was angry at himself. That night, Ethan sat on the roof of his house, staring up at the stars. The cold air bit at his skin, but he didn't feel it. His mind was somewhere else, spinning through memories of every wasted moment. Why am I like this? He whispered to himself. Why do I keep throwing it all away? For the first time in his life, Ethan thought about giving up. But then, his phone buzzed. A message. It was from his uncle, David, a former Navy SEAL, a man Ethan had always admired for his strength and discipline. Come see me at the cabin this weekend. We need to talk. 2 days later, Ethan drove deep into the Oregon woods, where David lived in a small cabin, far from distractions. The place was quiet, still. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke. They sat by the fire that night. Ethan told David everything, how he wanted to be someone great, but couldn't control his mind. How he kept choosing comfort over discipline, and how it had finally cost him something he couldn't get back. David listened silently. Then he stood up, grabbed 2 heavy backpacks, and handed one to Ethan. Come with me, he said. They hiked through the trees until they came to an old wooden bridge stretched over a raging river. The water below crashed violently against the rocks. David pointed to the other side. Your dreams are over there. Ethan squinted at the far bank. It seemed distant, almost impossible to reach. David pointed down at the water. That river is your mind, wild, uncontrolled. If you step off this bridge, if you lose focus, you'll get swept away. Then he turned and looked Ethan dead in the eyes. The bridge is your discipline. Without it, you're going nowhere. Ethan stood there, saying nothing. David continued, you think the enemy is your phone, your friends, social media. No, the enemy is your choice. Every moment you're choosing. Do I take another step forward, or do I fall? David's voice softened. Discipline isn't punishment. It's the greatest act of self-love there is, because when you're disciplined, you're saying to yourself, my future matters more than my comfort right now. From that day on, Ethan made a different choice. Not once, not twice, but every single day. He woke up at 5 a.m. and ran in the rain. He deleted every distraction from his phone and replaced them with audiobooks and study materials. He wrote a strict schedule and stuck to it like his life depended on it. Some people thought he was crazy. Others laughed. Ethan didn't care. There were days when his mind screamed for relief, when he craved the dopamine rush of scrolling or wasting time. But he remembered his uncle's words: discipline is choosing your future over your feelings. 1 year later, Ethan stood on the stage at the National Future Surgeons Conference. He wasn't in the audience anymore. He was the keynote speaker. His groundbreaking research on neural pathways had won him national recognition, and in his pocket was a full scholarship to Stanford's medical school. As he looked out at the crowd, he shared something deeply personal. "I used to think talent was enough, that being smart would get me there. I was wrong. Talent is potential energy. Discipline turns it into motion." He paused. The room was silent. Every day, you make a choice. Step forward on that bridge toward the life you want, or fall off into distraction. The life you want is on the other side of discipline. Years later, Dr. Ethan Carter stood in an operating room, hands steady as he performed a delicate surgery on a young child. His team watched in awe as he worked with precision and focus. When the surgery was over and the child's life had been saved, Ethan removed his gloves and looked through the window at the rising sun. He smiled because he knew discipline didn't limit his life. It gave him the power to save one. Discipline isn't about saying no to life. It's about saying yes to your future every day. You are one choice away from a completely different life. Your dream life isn't found in motivation. It's found in your daily decisions.